I'm a 29-year-old guy, and my wife, Anna, is 26. We've been together for 6 years, married for almost one. Anna is one of the kindest, most thoughtful people I've ever met. She's quiet, introverted, and doesn't like being the center of attention, which is part of what drew me to her in the first place. She's the calm to my chaos. But my mom, she's the complete opposite. My mom has always been overbearing. Growing up, I just thought it was her way of showing she cared. But as I got older, it started to feel suffocating. Every decision I made, college, career, even what I ate for breakfast, had to pass her unofficial approval test. She'd always say it was because she wanted the best for me, but it rarely felt like that. It felt like control. When I first introduced Anna to my mom, I thought things would go smoothly. Anna is sweet and polite, and I figured my mom would appreciate that. Instead, she was cold. She told me later that Anna was too quiet and didn't seem family-oriented. At the time, I brushed it off as her being protective, but it didn't stop there. Fast forward to our wedding, and it was like my mom was on a mission to prove a point. She wore a white dress, yes, a full-on white dress, and made a huge deal about how it was totally different from Anna's. During her toast, she made several passive-aggressive comments about how marriage is about family and how some people don't understand that. Anna didn't say anything. She just squeezed my hand under the table and smiled. But I was furious. After the wedding, things got worse. My mom excluded Anna from the family group chat. She'd host dinners and conveniently forget to invite us, later claiming they were just for blood relatives. When I called her out, she acted like I was overreacting, saying she was just trying to keep the sanctity of our family dynamic. It led to a lot of heated arguments, none of which got us anywhere. My older brother and younger sister stayed neutral throughout all of this. My brother Ryan is 35 and the golden child. He has a wife and kids and rarely gets involved in family drama. My sister Emma is 22 and still figuring out her place in the family. She doesn't want to rock the boat, which means she usually stays silent. It felt like I was the only one willing to stand up to my mom, which only made things worse. Then came the rumors. My mom started telling extended family that Anna was manipulative and controlling. A cousin of mine called to ask if Anna was really as bad as my mom was making her out to be. I confronted my mom about it, and she completely denied it, accusing Anna of lying to me. It was like talking to a brick wall. The breaking point came when my mom sent me an email, flat out stating that Anna wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. She said Anna made her uncomfortable, and that it would be better for everyone if I came alone. When I told Anna, she offered to step aside, saying she didn't want to cause any more trouble. But I wasn't about to let my mom dictate our marriage. I told her we'd both be coming, and if that wasn't okay, we wouldn't come at all. That's when my mom doubled down. She told me if I brought Anna, we were both uninvited. She claimed it was her house, her rules, and she didn't want negative energy ruining the holiday. I couldn't believe it. For years, I'd tried to balance keeping the peace with standing up for Anna, but this felt like the final straw. Something had to change. I realized this couldn't go on. My mom had made it clear that she wasn't going to accept Anna, no matter what. My siblings weren't going to back me up, and my extended family was either unaware of what was happening or too scared to get involved. Anna was trying to be the bigger person, but I knew it was unfair to keep putting her in this position. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving, it was about our future. I decided to confront my mom once and for all. No more excuses, no more trying to smooth things over. She needed to understand that if she couldn't respect my wife, she couldn't be part of my life. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the only way forward. I had to stand up for Anna and for us, even if it meant cutting ties with my own mother. And so, with Thanksgiving looming, I started preparing for what I knew would be one of the most difficult conversations of my life. Update 1. After Mom's email about Anna not being welcome at Thanksgiving, I knew I had to call her. I wasn't going to let her push Anna out of our lives any longer. I picked up the phone the day before Thanksgiving, steeling myself for what I knew would be a tense conversation. As soon as she picked up, I got straight to the point. Anna and I would be coming to Thanksgiving, and if that wasn't okay, then we wouldn't come at all. She didn't even let me finish. She cut me off, her voice sharp and loud, saying she'd already made her position clear. She wouldn't tolerate Anna's presence in her house. I told her it was non-negotiable, but before I could say anything else, she hung up on me. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone, half expecting her to call back. She didn't. That night, Anna suggested we skip Thanksgiving altogether. She didn't want to be the reason for more drama. I knew her heart was in the right place, but skipping felt like giving my mom exactly what she wanted. I told Anna we'd go together no matter what. This wasn't just about one holiday, it was about standing up for our marriage. Thanksgiving morning came, and I could feel the tension in the air as we got ready. Anna stayed quiet, but I could tell she was nervous. I didn't blame her. I was too. Still, we got in the car and made the 45-minute drive to my parents' house. The streets were quiet, the kind of stillness you only see on holidays. When we pulled up to the house, everything looked normal. Cars lined the driveway and street, and I could see the warm glow of lights through the windows. People were inside, chatting and laughing, and for a moment, I thought maybe my mom had changed her mind. But as we walked up to the door, it became clear that wasn't the case. I knocked, waiting for someone to answer. Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, the door creaked open just enough for my mom to appear. She didn't even look at Anna. Her eyes were locked on me, and her face was tight with anger. Without any greeting, she snapped, "You're not welcome here with her," and slammed the door shut. I stood there, stunned. Anna gently touched my arm, and I could see the embarrassment in her eyes. I knocked again, but this time there was no response. Through the window, I could see my siblings and other family members glancing our way, but no one came to the door. It was like they were all waiting to see what we'd do next. Realizing there was no point in standing there any longer, I turned to Anna and said we should leave. We got back in the car and drove in silence for a while. My mind was racing, but I didn't want to say anything that would make Anna feel worse. Eventually, we found a small diner that was open for the holiday and decided to eat there instead. It wasn't the Thanksgiving either of us had imagined, but at least we were together. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with messages from my siblings. Both Ryan and Emma apologized for what had happened, but made it clear they weren't going to confront Mom. Ryan said he didn't want to ruin the holiday by stirring up drama, and Emma admitted she didn't know how to handle Mom's temper. It was frustrating, but not surprising. This had always been the dynamic in our family. Everyone tiptoed around Mom's behavior, hoping it would blow over. By the time we got home, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to any more family events unless Anna was fully included. It wasn't fair to keep putting her through this, and honestly, I was done making excuses for my mom. The next morning, Mom called me. I knew she wasn't calling to apologize. Sure enough, she launched into a tirade, accusing me of ruining Thanksgiving and being ungrateful. She said I was choosing Anna over my real family and that she was hurt beyond words. I calmly told her that if she forced me to choose, I'd pick Anna every time. That only made her angrier. She started crying, saying she was losing her son and how she'd only ever tried to protect me. I didn't respond to her theatrics. I let her finish, then told her I wasn't going to discuss it any further. I ended the call and blocked her number, at least temporarily, to give myself some peace. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the right one. My mom had crossed too many lines, and it was clear she wasn't willing to change. I didn't know what the future held for our family dynamic, but one thing was certain. Anna and I were a team, and I wasn't going to let anyone come between us. Update 2. After the Thanksgiving fiasco, I thought my mom might back off for a while. I was wrong. Instead of reflecting or apologizing, she doubled down. A week later, I started getting messages from family members asking if everything was okay. At first, I didn't know what they were talking about. Then a cousin sent me screenshots of texts from my mom. She'd been messaging everyone, saying Anna was controlling, jealous, and trying to isolate me from my family. She even claimed Anna had told me to cut ties with them, which was a complete lie. I immediately called my cousin to clear things up. I explained what had been going on, how my mom refused to accept Anna and had been creating drama for years. My cousin was supportive but admitted she didn't want to get involved. It was frustrating, but at least she knew the truth. That evening, I decided to confront my siblings. If anyone could help stop my mom, it would be them. I called Ryan first. He listened quietly as I explained everything, but his response was predictable. That's just how Mom is. He told me I should let it go and focus on my own life. When I pointed out that this wasn't just about me anymore, it was about Anna, he shrugged it off, saying Mom would never change. Emma was next. She was more sympathetic, saying she understood how unfair Mom was being. But when I asked if she'd back me up, she hesitated. She said she didn't want to pick sides or upset Mom, especially since she still relied on her for support. It was clear I was on my own. The next day, Mom escalated again. She sent me a long, rambling text message saying she was writing me out of her will unless I came to my senses. She accused Anna of turning me against my family and said she couldn't stand by while I threw my life away. It was exhausting to read, but it also solidified my decision to take a stand. When I showed Anna the message, she urged me not to escalate things further. She said she didn't want to come between me and my family, but I told her this wasn't her fault. Mom had been like this long before Anna ever entered the picture. This was about boundaries, and it was time to set them. That night, I sat down and wrote an email to the entire family. I detailed everything Mom had done, the rumors, the exclusion, the Thanksgiving incident, and made it clear I wouldn't tolerate her behavior anymore. I told them I wasn't cutting anyone out, but I also wasn't going to keep subjecting Anna to this kind of treatment. If they wanted to reach out to me or Anna, they were welcome to, but I wouldn't attend any family events unless Anna was fully included. The responses started trickling in the next day. Some relatives expressed support, but admitted they didn't want to get involved. A few said they'd noticed Mom's behavior over the years, but hadn't wanted to say anything. One aunt even thanked me for speaking up, saying she'd had her own issues with Mom in the past. But for the most part, people stayed quiet, clearly not wanting to rock the boat. Mom, of course, didn't take it well. She sent a reply to everyone on the email chain, painting herself as the victim. She claimed she'd only ever tried to protect me and accused Anna of turning me into a stranger. Her message was full of dramatic language about how she was being cast out of her own family. It was classic Mom, deflect and play the victim. I decided enough was enough. I blocked her number and her social media accounts to give myself some distance. But that didn't stop her. A few days later, Anna found a handwritten letter on our porch. It was from my mom. She'd driven to our house and left it there, even though I hadn't told her our new address. The letter was full of the same accusations as her texts and emails, but seeing it in her handwriting made it feel more invasive. Anna was understandably unsettled. She didn't say much, but I could tell the whole situation was weighing on her. I started seriously considering cutting ties with Mom entirely. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about protecting my wife and our home from her harassment. For now, I've kept the door open, but just barely. I've made it clear that if Mom doesn't change, I'll have no choice but to cut contact for good. It's not a decision I take lightly, but I can't keep living like this. I owe it to Anna, and to myself, to create a peaceful, drama-free life, even if that means leaving some people behind. Update 3. Not long after the handwritten letter showed up on our porch, my mom decided to take things to the next level. One Saturday morning, Anna and I were at home enjoying a quiet breakfast when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I glanced at Anna, who just shrugged. When I opened the door, there she was, my mom, standing on the porch, looking furious. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped forward, trying to push past me into the house. Anna had come to see who was at the door, and Mom caught sight of her. That's when it started. Mom demanded to speak to me alone, insisting Anna go back inside. Anna didn't argue. She just turned and walked away. But that wasn't enough for Mom. She tried to follow her, claiming she had a right to be in her son's home. I stepped between them, blocking her path. I told her she wasn't coming inside and that we'd talk on the porch if she wanted. That's when she started yelling, accusing Anna of brainwashing me and turning me against my own family. She went on and on about how I was throwing my life away by letting Anna control me and how I'd regret it someday. I didn't let her finish. I told her this was her final warning. Either she respected my marriage or she would stay out of my life completely. There was no middle ground anymore. Mom didn't take it well. She doubled down, claiming I was being manipulated and that I wasn't thinking clearly. When I stood firm, she finally stormed off, muttering something about how I'd regret this decision. Once she was gone, I called Ryan and Emma to let them know what had happened. Ryan didn't seem surprised. He said Mom had mentioned she might try to talk sense into me. Instead of supporting me, though, he accused me of overreacting. He said it wasn't a big deal and that I should have just let her inside to avoid the drama. Emma was more understanding, but as usual, she didn't want to get involved. She said she didn't agree with what Mom was doing but didn't want to take sides. After that incident, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. Mom wasn't going to change, and my siblings weren't going to stand up to her. I decided to make things official. I drafted a letter explaining my decision to cut ties. I laid everything out clearly, her behavior, the damage it was causing, and the boundaries I needed to protect my marriage. I sent the letter the next day. Mom's response was predictable. Instead of reflecting on what I'd written, she decided to retaliate. A few days later, Anna came home from work visibly upset. She told me my mom had called her workplace, claiming Anna was unprofessional and making all sorts of bizarre accusations. Thankfully, Anna's boss didn't believe a word of it and dismissed the whole thing as nonsense. But the fact that Mom had gone that far was deeply unsettling. That was the final straw for me. I contacted a lawyer and started the process of filing a no-contact order against her. I hated that it had come to this, but I couldn't let her continue to harass Anna or disrupt our lives. Once the paperwork was filed, I informed Ryan and Emma. As expected, Ryan thought I was taking things too far. He said families should forgive each other, no matter what. Emma didn't say much, but I could tell she thought I was being harsh. I stood my ground. I told them this wasn't about forgiveness, it was about protecting my wife and setting boundaries. If Mom wanted to repair our relationship someday, it would have to start with her taking responsibility for her actions. Until then, I wasn't going to budge. With the no-contact order in place, things finally started to settle down. Anna and I focused on rebuilding a sense of normalcy. We spent more time with friends, planned a small vacation, and started hosting our own gatherings with people who actually supported us. It felt good to take back control of our lives. Mom, of course, continued to play the victim to anyone who would listen. She told extended family that I'd abandoned her and let Anna tear the family apart. Some relatives believed her, but others reached out to me privately, offering their support. It was a mixed bag, but I appreciated the ones who understood. I know cutting ties with a parent isn't something most people can relate to. It's messy, painful, and full of second-guessing. But at the end of the day, I had to make a choice. Keep sacrificing my peace for the sake of someone who refused to change, or put my marriage and my mental health first. I chose the latter, and I don't regret it. For now, I'm focusing on building a healthier, drama-free life with Anna. It hasn't been easy, but every step away from the chaos feels like a step in the right direction. And that's enough for me. Update 4. Once the no-contact order was in place, I thought things might settle down, but instead, they started to unravel in a way I hadn't expected. Mom's antics weren't just affecting me and Anna anymore, they were pulling the entire family into the drama. At first, the extended family didn't seem to know what to make of the situation. Some relatives believed Mom's version of events, where she painted herself as a loving mother abandoned by her ungrateful son. Others started putting the pieces together and realizing that this wasn't a one-time issue. It wasn't long before the family began to split into factions. A few cousins and an aunt decided to cut contact with Mom entirely, saying they were tired of her manipulation. One cousin even told me they'd dealt with similar behavior from her in the past but had stayed quiet to avoid rocking the boat. Meanwhile, Mom doubled down on her attempts to control the narrative. She sent out a tearful video to the family group chat, talking about how much she missed her son and how she was being unfairly punished. But even in her apology, there was no accountability. She didn't admit to spreading rumors about Anna or trying to interfere in our marriage. Instead, she blamed me for not understanding how much she loved me and accused Anna of turning me into someone she didn't recognize. I didn't respond to the video, and I had no plans to. It was clear she wasn't ready to take responsibility for her actions. A few family members reached out after seeing it, asking if I'd consider giving her another chance. I told them I wasn't interested in reconnecting unless she made genuine changes, and even then, it would be on my terms. In the middle of all this, Emma surprised me. She reached out, saying she wanted to reconnect with me and Anna. She admitted she'd been too scared to stand up to Mom before, but was tired of staying silent. I was hesitant at first. Emma had always been more of a bystander in the family drama, and I didn't want her wavering if Mom tried to rope her back in. But she seemed sincere, so Anna and I cautiously agreed to meet up with her. We set some boundaries for our interactions, making it clear that any relationship we had with Emma couldn't include Mom. To my surprise, Emma respected that. Over time, she became one of our biggest allies, even openly criticizing Mom's behavior to other family members. It was a refreshing change, and it made me feel like maybe some relationships in the family could be salvaged. Mom, however, wasn't backing down. She tried to gatekeep family gatherings, insisting that anyone who sided with me was betraying her. Her grip on the family dynamic started to weaken, though, as more people chose to skip events rather than deal with her drama. Even Ryan, who had always been firmly in her corner, started to notice the dwindling attendance. Instead of reflecting on why this was happening, Ryan became increasingly hostile toward me. He blamed me for tearing the family apart and accused me of letting Anna drive a wedge between everyone. I told him, as plainly as I could, that Mom's actions had created the rift, not my response to them. He wasn't interested in hearing it. We haven't spoken much since. On the brighter side, some supportive family members began reaching out to Anna and me directly. One cousin, who'd cut ties with Mom, invited us to a small, informal gathering. It was the first time in months we'd been able to attend a family event without worrying about drama. Everyone there was warm and welcoming, and Anna finally got to experience what a family gathering should feel like. She later told me it was the first time she'd felt truly accepted by anyone in my family. Of course, Mom found out about the gathering. She sent angry messages to everyone involved, accusing them of siding with the enemy and trying to destroy her family. Her reaction only pushed people further away. By then, most of us had stopped responding to her messages. It was clear that engaging with her only made things worse. As more people began recognizing Mom's toxic behavior, the family dynamic started to shift. Relatives who'd once stayed silent were now more willing to speak up, and the pressure to keep up appearances for Mom's sake began to fade. It was a slow process, but it felt like real progress. Through it all, Anna and I grew closer. Standing up for her, and for us, had been difficult, but it strengthened our relationship in ways I didn't expect. We started building our own traditions, hosting small gatherings with friends and supportive family members. It wasn't the picture-perfect family dynamic I'd grown up hoping for, but it was honest, peaceful, and full of love. As for Mom, she's still playing the victim to anyone who will listen, but fewer people are buying it. The more she pushes, the more isolated she becomes. I don't know if she'll ever change, but I've stopped waiting for her to. My focus is on the life Anna and I are building together, and for the first time in a long time, it feels like we're finally moving forward. Update 5. In the months that followed, Mom's attempts to regain control became less frequent, but when they happened, they were more desperate. She left a final letter in my mailbox, packed with emotional language about how I'd betrayed her and how she'd never forgive me for what I'd done. I didn't bother responding. I put the letter away in a drawer and moved on. By that point, Anna and I had found a new sense of normalcy. With Mom out of the picture, our lives felt calmer and more balanced. We didn't have to tiptoe around family events or brace ourselves for the latest drama. It was a relief to focus on our relationship and future without interference. Emma became a regular presence in our lives, surprising both of us. She started dropping by for coffee or inviting us out for lunch, and she didn't shy away from discussing what had happened. She openly criticized Mom's actions, calling out her manipulation and how it had impacted the entire family. It was refreshing to see Emma stand up for herself and for us, and her support meant more than I could put into words. Ryan, on the other hand, went in the opposite direction. After months of tension, he officially cut contact with me. He said he didn't want to choose sides but felt that my decision to block Mom and file a no-contact order had crossed a line. It stung, but I wasn't surprised. Ryan had always been closer to Mom, and I knew he'd stick with her no matter what. The family split felt final, but I'd made peace with it. Instead of mourning what we'd lost, Anna and I focused on building something new. We started hosting our own holiday gatherings, inviting only those who supported us. The first one was small, just Emma, a few cousins, and some close friends, but it was warm, welcoming, and drama-free. For the first time, Anna felt comfortable at a family event, and seeing her relaxed and happy made it all worth it. Mom, of course, continued to play the victim to anyone who would listen. She complained to extended family members, neighbors, even her book club, about how her son had abandoned her. But her words carried less weight than they used to. Most people had seen through her act by now. Some still reached out to check in, but many stopped engaging with her altogether. Meanwhile, Anna was thriving. Without Mom's interference, she threw herself into her career, earning a promotion that had been long overdue. She seemed freer, more confident, and happier than I'd seen her in years. We decided to celebrate by taking a much-needed vacation. We booked a week at a beach resort, and for 7 blissful days we left everything behind. No family drama, no work stress, just the two of us enjoying the sun and each other's company. When we got back, I felt more grateful than ever for the people who had stood by us during the chaos. Emma had become one of our strongest allies, and a few supportive relatives had started reaching out more frequently. One of my aunts even organized a family barbecue, specifically excluding Mom. She told me she wanted to create a space where everyone could reconnect without fear of drama. It felt like a turning point, and Anna and I were happy to attend. As we settled into this new chapter of our lives, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Cutting ties with Mom had been one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made, but it had also been the right one. I'd spent years trying to keep the peace, hoping she'd change, but all it did was hurt the people I cared about most. Taking a stand wasn't just about protecting Anna, it was about protecting myself too. Now, Anna and I are surrounded by people who genuinely care about us, and our relationship is stronger than ever. We've built a life full of love, laughter, and mutual respect, free from the shadow of toxicity. And while I wish things could have been different with Mom, I don't regret the choices I made. In the end, standing up for my wife and our marriage was the best decision I could have made. This chapter of our story is over, but it's one that taught me a lot about boundaries, family, and what it means to put your loved ones first. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for now, I'm happy, and that's enough. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and this story revolves around my family, specifically my mom and my younger sister, Lily, who's 24 now. Growing up, I always felt like something was a little off, but it wasn't until I got older that I started putting the pieces together. Looking back, the signs were always there, starting from when I was a kid. One of my earliest memories involves my birthday. Every year, my grandparents would send me a card with some money tucked inside. It wasn't a huge amount, maybe $50 or $100, but as a kid, that felt like hitting the jackpot. I'd get excited thinking about all the toys or games I could buy, but almost every year, that money would somehow disappear. My mom had a habit of taking it, claiming it was for the family or to help with bills. Being a kid, I didn't question it much. She'd tell me it was something I was doing to help everyone, and I wanted to be a good son. But then I started noticing a pattern. Around my 10th birthday, I remember one incident that stuck out. My grandparents had sent me $100 that year, and it vanished just like always. A week later, Lily, who was only 7 at the time, showed up with a brand new dollhouse and a bunch of accessories. It was the kind of setup I knew we couldn't really afford, and it clicked. That money wasn't going to bills. I asked my mom about it, and she brushed me off, saying, "Lily deserves to feel special too." That became the recurring theme of my childhood. I'd get something, and somehow it would end up being for Lily instead. My dad was hardly ever around to see it happening. He worked long hours at a factory job, and when he was home, he was too tired to notice. My mom ran the house, and questioning her decisions was like walking into a minefield. Even when I did muster the courage to bring it up, she'd always turn it around on me, making me feel like I was selfish for even asking. By the time I hit my teenage years, I was starting to see the bigger picture. My mom's favoritism wasn't subtle, it was glaring. At 16, I got $200 for my birthday from my grandparents. I had big plans for that money. I wanted to save up for a gaming console I'd been dreaming about for months. But before I could even stash the cash, it was gone. My mom had taken it, saying it was going towards something important. A few weeks later, I found out what that important thing was. Lily had a shiny new tablet, and she wasn't shy about showing it off. That was the first time I really tried to stand up for myself. I confronted my mom, asking why she'd taken my money to buy something for Lily. Her response was predictable. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, reminding me that family comes first. That phrase, "family comes first," was her go-to justification for everything. I didn't win that argument, but it stuck with me. My grandparents started to notice the dynamic too. They began giving me gifts directly instead of handing over cash to my mom. Of course, that didn't sit well with her. She called them controlling and claimed they were trying to undermine her authority. It created a lot of tension, and eventually they stopped giving me money altogether to avoid more conflict. Over the years, it became clearer that I was always expected to be the bigger person. Whenever Lily got into trouble, I was the one told to step in and help. If she wanted something, I was supposed to sacrifice. My mom framed it as my role as the older sibling, but it felt more like I was just a second-class citizen in my own home. By the time I turned 18, I was ready to move out and start my own life. My grandparents gave me $1,000 as a birthday gift to help with college expenses. It felt like a fresh start until my mom got her hands on it. She insisted it would go into a college savings account for me, and I believed her. Later, I found out the truth. That money had paid for Lily's dance camp that summer. It was the last straw for me. Once I went off to college, I started distancing myself from my family. I focused on my studies and built a life for myself, far away from the house where everything seemed to revolve around Lily. I didn't go home much, and when I did, it was always the same story. Lily's achievements, Lily's needs, Lily's life. My mom acted like I should just be happy for her and move on, but it was hard to forget all those years of being pushed aside. Now I'm 27 and financially independent. I've built a career I'm proud of and don't rely on my family for anything. But recently I've been reflecting on all those moments and wondering if it's time to finally confront my mom about everything. Part of me thinks it's pointless, she'll never admit she did anything wrong. But another part of me feels like I owe it to myself to say something, even if it's just for closure. The memories I've held onto for so long deserve to be addressed, and maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop letting her narrative control the story. Update 1. A few weeks ago, I decided I couldn't keep holding everything in anymore. I've spent years replaying the moments in my head, money disappearing, Lily getting gifts paid for with what was supposed to be mine, the constant dismissals from my mom, and I finally reached my breaking point. I told myself that the next family dinner would be the time I'd bring it all up. I was ready to lay everything out, no matter how awkward it got. The dinner started like any other. My mom had made her signature lasagna, Lily was chatting about her new job, and my dad was mostly quiet, nodding along. I sat there, trying to keep my composure while the small talk went on. It felt surreal, like I was about to drop a bomb no one saw coming. When the moment felt right, I asked my mom if she remembered all the birthday money I used to get from my grandparents. She barely glanced up from her plate and said something vague about how generous they always were. That's when I pressed, asking her why the money never stayed with me and always seemed to disappear. The table went quiet. Lily stopped mid-sentence, looking confused, and my dad finally looked up, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. My mom, on the other hand, didn't miss a beat. She waved me off, saying I must be misremembering or exaggerating. According to her, the money always went toward important things for the family. That's when I pulled out my journal. I had it with me, tucked under the chair, just in case I needed to back up my claims. I flipped to a page and read out the entry for my 16th birthday, detailing how the $200 from my grandparents was used to buy Lily a tablet. My mom's face froze for a moment, but then she quickly recovered, insisting I was blowing things out of proportion. Lily looked genuinely confused. She asked what I was talking about, and when I explained that the tablet was bought with my birthday money, she looked shocked. She stammered that she had no idea and apologized if that was true, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. My mom, however, doubled down. She said I was being petty for bringing this up after so many years and accused me of trying to stir up drama. My dad stayed quiet at first, but when I brought up the $1,000 my grandparents gave me for college and how it ended up funding Lily's dance camp instead, his jaw dropped. He asked my mom if that was true. She tried to deflect, saying she'd made hard choices to keep the family happy and that it wasn't easy balancing everything on her own, but he didn't look convinced. Things escalated quickly from there. Lily started getting defensive, saying she never asked for any of this and that it wasn't fair for me to hold it against her. I told her it wasn't about her, it was about the choices our mom made. My mom, meanwhile, was getting visibly upset. She called me ungrateful and accused me of turning my grandparents against her, saying they had always been too controlling with their money. That's when I decided to bring my grandparents into the conversation. I called them on speakerphone right there at the table and asked if they remembered the $1,000 they gave me for college. My grandma didn't hesitate. She said she remembered it clearly and had been heartbroken when she found out it was used for something else. She said she and my grandpa had always suspected my mom wasn't being truthful about where the money went. Hearing that seemed to flip a switch in my mom. She started crying, saying she'd done her best and that I was ungrateful for all the sacrifices she'd made. My dad tried to calm her down, but she wasn't having it. She kept saying I was ruining the family by dredging up the past and making everyone uncomfortable. I couldn't sit there any longer. I told her I needed time to process everything and left the dinner early. On my way home, my phone started blowing up. My mom was sending text after text, accusing me of trying to destroy our family and turning everyone against her. Lily sent a message too, apologizing again, but also asking me not to make things worse for our mom. Feeling overwhelmed, I decided to share the story on Reddit. I laid out everything, how my mom used my birthday money, the favoritism toward Lily, and how the dinner had gone. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few comments telling me I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did, but the response was overwhelming. The post went viral, and thousands of people chimed in. Most of them were supportive, telling me I had every right to confront my mom and set boundaries. Some even shared similar stories about favoritism and financial manipulation in their own families. It was validating in a way I didn't expect. Now I'm left wondering what to do next. My mom's texts haven't stopped, and Lily has gone quiet. My dad hasn't reached out either, which isn't surprising. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not alone in this. Whatever happens next, I know I can't keep letting this go unchecked. Update 2. The aftermath of the family dinner turned out to be more chaotic than I expected. Within days, my mom had gone into full damage control mode, reaching out to every extended family member she could think of. According to her, I was the unreasonable one, dredging up old grievances just to make her look bad. She painted herself as the victim, saying she had sacrificed so much for the family, only to have me throw it back in her face. That's when the calls and texts started. Cousins, aunts, and even a couple of family friends were suddenly reaching out to me, urging me to be the bigger person and make things right. One of my aunts told me outright that my mom was crying every day and couldn't understand why I was being so cruel. Another relative reminded me how hard my mom had worked to raise both me and Lily, and that I should focus on the good times instead of dwelling on the past. It was overwhelming, but not everyone took her side. My grandparents were furious when they found out what was happening. They called me to say they were proud of me for finally standing up to her and told me not to let the pressure get to me. During that call, my grandpa shared a few more details about my mom's history with money. Apparently, the financial manipulation went back even further than I thought. When I was a toddler, my mom had convinced my grandparents to give her money for my daycare fees, only for them to later find out she was using it to pay off other debts. Hearing that just added fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, Lily sent me another message, apologizing again for unknowingly benefiting from my birthday money. But then she followed it up by asking me not to ruin our mom's reputation. She said our mom was struggling emotionally, and that this whole situation was tearing the family apart. I didn't know how to respond. On one hand, I wanted to believe her apology was sincere. On the other hand, it felt like she was still defending my mom's actions, even if she claimed she didn't know about them at the time. All of this pushed me to dig a little deeper into my finances. I started reviewing everything I could from my college years, especially the so-called college savings account my mom had always mentioned. It didn't take long to uncover another surprise. Turns out, not only was the $1,000 from my grandparents used for Lily's dance camp, but a portion of my college fund had also been spent on her extracurricular activities. I found receipts for things like private lessons and travel expenses for competitions, none of which had anything to do with me. When I confronted my mom about it, she didn't deny it. Instead, she claimed she had no choice and that everything she did was out of love for the family. She told me I wouldn't understand how hard it was to be a single parent most of the time, with my dad always working long hours. She kept saying she only wanted the best for both of us, and that her decisions were never meant to hurt me. It wasn't the explanation I was looking for. Feeling overwhelmed, I decided to start therapy. My grandparents actually encouraged me to do it, saying it might help me make sense of everything I was feeling. In therapy, I started unpacking not just the financial issues, but also the years of favoritism and emotional manipulation. My therapist suggested writing a letter to my mom to express everything I wanted to say, but in a way that wouldn't escalate the conflict further. I spent hours drafting that letter. I poured my heart into it, detailing how her actions had made me feel undervalued for years. I explained how the constant favoritism toward Lily had strained our relationship and why I needed to set boundaries for my own well-being. Before giving it to her, I showed it to my dad. He read it carefully and, for the first time, admitted he had failed to protect me from the favoritism. He apologized, saying he should have stepped in sooner but didn't realize how bad it had gotten. When I handed the letter to my mom, she barely glanced at it before dismissing it outright. She called it a waste of time and accused me of trying to punish her for things she couldn't change. It was disheartening, but at that point, I wasn't expecting much from her. I updated my story on Reddit again, sharing everything that had happened since the family dinner. The response was overwhelming. People flooded the comments with support, telling me I was doing the right thing by standing up for myself. Many suggested I consider going no contact with my mom altogether. It was something I had been thinking about, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step. Meanwhile, things with Lily were getting tense. She started pulling away, and our conversations became less frequent. It was clear the situation was driving a wedge between us, which only added to the complexity of everything. For now, I've decided to limit contact with my mom. I haven't gone fully no contact yet, but I'm keeping my distance. I don't know what the next step will be, but I'm starting to realize that protecting my peace might mean leaving some relationships behind. Update 3. After limiting contact with my mom, I realized I needed to get a clear picture of what she had done with my finances over the years. It wasn't just about the birthday money or the college savings anymore. It felt like there was more I hadn't uncovered. So, I decided to go through everything, from my bank accounts to my student loans, to see if there were any other surprises. It didn't take long to find something that stopped me in my tracks. While reviewing my student loan documents, I noticed a loan in my name that I didn't remember taking out. The amount wasn't small either. It was over $10,000. After digging through the details, I found that the loan had been taken out during my first year of college and had my mom listed as the cosigner. I was shocked. I had no memory of agreeing to this loan, and it was clear that my mom had taken it out without telling me. At this point, I knew I needed professional help. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in financial disputes and explained the situation. The lawyer confirmed that what my mom did was illegal and that I had every right to take action. They walked me through my options, including filing a formal complaint to dispute the loan and potentially pursuing legal charges against my mom. Armed with this new information, I decided to confront her again. This time, I didn't go to her house. I called her and laid everything out. I told her I had found the loan and asked her to explain. At first, she tried to deny it, but when I read off the details, including the date it was signed and the lender's name, she broke down. She admitted to taking out the loan, claiming she was desperate and didn't know what else to do. She said the money had gone toward covering household expenses and some of Lily's extracurricular activities. After the call, I told my dad what I had discovered. He was furious, not just at my mom but at himself for not being more involved in our family's finances. They ended up having a massive argument, which my dad later told me ended with my mom accusing him of failing to support her and leaving her to figure everything out on her own. My dad was starting to see the full extent of the damage, and it was clear he felt guilty for not stepping in sooner. Lily, meanwhile, tried to mediate. She asked me to come over and talk things out as a family, saying that everyone just wanted to move forward. I agreed to meet, but during the conversation, she inadvertently revealed more instances of favoritism that I hadn't even known about. For example, there were times when my mom had used money from my part-time job during high school to buy things for Lily, claiming it was for shared family expenses. Hearing that only added to my frustration. After the meeting, I had to make a decision. My lawyer was encouraging me to move forward with legal action, but I knew it would cause an even bigger rift in the family. My grandparents stepped in again, offering to help me financially so I wouldn't feel pressured to drop the case. They told me that standing up for myself was the right thing to do, even if it was difficult. At the same time, my story was gaining even more traction online. My latest update on Reddit had gone viral, and while most people were supportive, there were some who accused me of being too harsh or not understanding my mom's struggles. It was hard not to let those comments get to me, but I tried to focus on the advice from those who had been through similar situations. A few days later, my mom called me, begging me to drop the issue. She promised to make things right if I didn't take legal action. She even offered to start paying me back for the loan, but I could tell she was only trying to avoid the legal consequences. I told her I needed time to think about it. That's when my dad suggested we hold a family meeting to try and resolve everything. I was hesitant, but I agreed. The meeting was a disaster from the start. My mom kept shifting the blame, accusing me of overreacting and making her look bad. Lily, who had been trying to stay neutral, finally snapped and accused me of ruining everything for the family. My dad tried to mediate, but it was clear no one was on the same page. By the end of the meeting, I knew there was no way I could back down. My mom wasn't willing to take accountability, and Lily was too caught up in the idea that I was somehow the bad guy. I decided right then that I was going to move forward with legal action. Since then, I've been leaning heavily on my grandparents and close friends for support. They've been my rock through all of this, reminding me that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. It's been a tough road, but I'm determined to reclaim my autonomy and finally put an end to the years of manipulation. Update 4. After discovering the fraudulent loan my mom took out in my name, I officially filed a formal complaint. The process was nerve-wracking, but my lawyer reassured me that I was doing the right thing. The complaint triggered a legal investigation, and within days, my mom received a notice informing her of the situation. This set off a chain reaction that shook my family to its core. When my dad found out I had gone through with legal action, he was furious. He called me, demanding to know why I had taken such an extreme step without consulting him first. I reminded him that this wasn't just about family disagreements, my financial future was at stake. He eventually calmed down, but it was clear he was struggling to process the fallout. My mom, on the other hand, completely shut down. She refused to speak to me, telling my dad to handle the situation while she wallowed in self-pity. Lily quickly took sides, standing firmly with my mom. She sent me a series of messages accusing me of being vindictive and obsessed with ruining the family dynamic. She claimed I was overreacting and should have just spoken to mom privately to work things out. It was frustrating, especially since Lily had been apologetic just a few weeks earlier. Now, it seemed like she was doubling down on the idea that I was the problem. Meanwhile, my extended family got involved again. My mom, true to form, called up every relative she could think of, spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. Within days, I was being bombarded with texts and calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all urging me to let it go for the sake of family peace. Some even accused me of being cruel for putting my mom through the stress of a legal investigation. But not everyone bought into her narrative. My grandparents, once again, came to my defense. They called me to share more stories from my childhood that highlighted my mom's pattern of prioritizing Lily over me. For instance, during one Christmas, my mom had taken the money my grandparents gave me to buy presents for Lily, leaving me with nothing but a pair of socks. Hearing these stories only reinforced my decision to move forward with the legal case. The court noticed my mom received escalated tensions even further. She called my dad in tears, blaming me for tearing the family apart and saying she couldn't believe I would go this far. My dad, trying to play mediator, arranged for us all to sit down and talk things through. I reluctantly agreed, hoping it might help clear the air. The meeting was a disaster from the start. My mom opened with a dramatic monologue about how everything she did was for the family and how ungrateful I was for not seeing that. Lily chimed in, accusing me of being jealous of her and trying to destroy our mom out of spite. I calmly explained the facts, how my mom had taken out a loan in my name without my consent, how she had misused my birthday money for years, and how her actions had left me with financial burdens I never asked for. But it didn't matter. They weren't interested in the truth, they were focused on protecting their version of events. At one point, my dad tried to step in, suggesting we all compromise and move forward, but I refused to back down. I told them this wasn't something I could sweep under the rug. My mom stormed out of the meeting, and Lily followed, leaving my dad sitting there looking defeated. After that meeting, I decided to go temporarily no contact with both my mom and Lily. I needed to protect my mental health, and the constant guilt-tripping and accusations weren't helping. My grandparents and close friends were my lifeline during this time, encouraging me to stay strong and reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. The drama spilled over onto social media after I posted another update on Reddit. The post went viral, and while most commenters were supportive, a few criticized me for pursuing legal action against my own mom. Still, the overwhelming majority validated my decision, sharing their own stories of family betrayal and encouraging me to see it through to the end. Then came the next twist. My mom tried to settle things out of court. She offered to repay part of the loan if I dropped the complaint. It was tempting, if only because it might have ended the ordeal sooner, but I couldn't ignore the bigger picture. This wasn't just about the money, it was about accountability. Accepting a partial repayment felt like letting her off the hook for everything she had done. Lily didn't make things easier. She sent me a long, angry message accusing me of ruining our family and saying I was tearing apart the only people who ever truly cared about me. It stung, but it also made me realize how deeply ingrained my mom's manipulative tactics were in our family dynamic. In the end, I chose to proceed with the legal case. My mom needed to face the consequences of her actions, not just for my sake, but to send a message that this kind of behavior wasn't acceptable. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I knew it was the right one. Update 5. The court case wrapped up quicker than I anticipated. The legal investigation confirmed that my mom had taken out the loan in my name without my consent and misused the funds. The court ordered her to repay the full amount along with additional financial restitution to cover the interest and penalties I had incurred. It felt surreal hearing the final decision, but it also brought a sense of closure. Unsurprisingly, my mom didn't take it well. She blamed me for destroying our family, insisting she had only acted out of desperation to keep things afloat. She stopped speaking to me altogether and doubled down on her victim narrative to anyone who would listen. I heard through extended family that she was telling people I had turned on her and ruined what little bond we had left. Some relatives took her side, but others, especially those who learned the full truth, reached out to me with support. Lily decided to go no contact with me after the court decision. From what I gathered, she believed I had overreacted and had blown the situation out of proportion. She fully supported my mom, claiming that I had ruined her life by dragging everything through the courts. It stung, but at this point, I wasn't surprised. Lily had always been in my mom's corner, and it didn't seem like that would change anytime soon. My dad's reaction was more complicated. He didn't agree with how my mom had handled things, but he also struggled with the fallout. After the court case, he started reaching out to me privately. He admitted that he had failed me by not stepping in sooner and promised to do better moving forward. It wasn't an instant fix, but I appreciated his efforts. For the first time, it felt like he was trying to build a real relationship with me, separate from the mess my mom had created. My mom, meanwhile, kept trying to paint herself as the victim. She even attempted to rally more extended family members to her side, but by now, most of them knew the truth. My grandparents, in particular, were not having it. They stood by me throughout the entire ordeal, celebrating my courage to stand up for myself. They even offered to help me with some of the lingering financial fallout, although I assured them I had it under control. Therapy became a cornerstone for me during this time. I had started going to process everything, but now I found myself making real progress. My therapist helped me unpack years of manipulation and favoritism, and I began to see patterns I hadn't fully understood before. It wasn't just about the money, it was about control and how my mom had always used guilt to keep me in line. Slowly but surely, I learned to prioritize my mental health and set boundaries with toxic family members. Outside of family drama, my career was taking off. I channeled all my energy into work and ended up landing a major promotion. It was a game changer, not just financially, but also in terms of my confidence. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly in control of my life. I also made the decision to go permanently no contact with my mom and Lily. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one for me. I knew that trying to maintain a relationship with them would only reopen old wounds, and I needed to move forward. With clear boundaries in place, I finally started to find peace. The story I shared on Reddit continued to resonate with people. My updates gained massive traction, with thousands of comments from others who had experienced similar situations. Many thanked me for sharing my journey, saying it gave them the courage to stand up for themselves too. It was humbling to see how many people related to my story and found strength in it. My dad continued to work on repairing our relationship. He started reaching out more frequently, checking in on how I was doing and even asking about therapy. He admitted he had been blind to the favoritism for years and was determined to make up for it. While it's still a work in progress, I'm cautiously optimistic about where we're headed. Months later, something unexpected happened. Lily sent me an email. In it, she apologized for her behavior and acknowledged the unfair dynamic that had existed between us. She admitted she hadn't fully understood how much I had been sidelined growing up and expressed regret for not supporting me during the legal case. It was an emotional message, and while I appreciated the gesture, I knew I needed to proceed carefully. I wrote back, thanking her for the apology but setting clear boundaries. I told her that if we were to rebuild any kind of relationship, it would have to be on my terms. For now, I'm keeping things at a distance, but I'm open to seeing where it goes in the future. As for my mom, I haven't heard from her since the court case ended, and I don't expect to. And honestly, that's fine with me. The years of manipulation, favoritism, and guilt tripping are behind me now, and I'm focused on building a future where I surround myself with people who truly care about me. This chapter of my life has been one of the hardest I've ever faced, but it's also been one of the most transformative. I've learned to stand up for myself, set boundaries, and prioritize my well-being. With the support of my grandparents, my friends, and even my dad, I'm finally moving forward. For the first time in a long time, I feel free.